Hey everybody, welcome back to Mother of the Year. This is Andrea bringing you another exciting episode all about the perfectly imperfect moms out there. I do want to take a moment and ask you to excuse the sound of the washer and dryer again. This is the only time I can get my laundry done when the kids are sleeping, so it provides a nice soundtrack for our podcast. It's the most wonderful time of the year, the holidays. I've actually been off for the last week. I thought I'd be able to make this podcast happen sooner than later, but I kept the kids in daycare for part of the week, even though I was home. See, Mother of the Year right there. Um, you know, it wasn't as enjoyable as I would have liked it to be. I had 2 days to myself, but part of the time I just really missed them. And then part of the time I was stressing out about the million things I should have been doing during those days off. I think I had like a couple hours each of those days where I really was enjoying my time to myself, drinking hot coffee, watching a couple shows on my DVR, but the rest of the time I either missed my kids or felt like a giant loser. So I am happy I had that time, but ultimately I'm happy to be going back to work tomorrow. So before we delve into this week's topic, I want to share with you that I did start a Mother of the Year podcast Instagram account. So if you have an Instagram, please go follow me at Mother of the Year Podcast. That is where I post lots of real life moments. The other day I had a picture of my daughter throwing a tantrum. And then yesterday I shared that I drove an hour and 14 minutes just to go visit my parents and just so I could take a hot shower. Now, mind you, I do have family visiting. My brother and his wife and their 2 kids were visiting, so I got to see them as well. But the best part was taking that long, hot, uninterrupted shower. It was amazing. So I want to take a moment and think about the fact that the holidays are upon us, if you can believe it or not. So I did have the week off, but the end of the week, my kids did not have school. The daycare was closed. So that means for the last 4 days, I've had my kids all to myself. We've decorated cookies. We've made gingerbread houses. We've sang Christmas carols. Actually, we haven't done any of that. It's really, really difficult to find ways to entertain a 2.5-year-old and a 7-month-old. So one thing that I do during these times that drives my husband crazy is I keep myself as busy as possible. So as I mentioned, I do have family visiting. So even though they were staying about 100 miles away from me, I made the trip down to see them twice. One of the days I pulled my daughter out of daycare and I brought her down with me kind of as like a mother-daughter trip. And the second time I had both kids with me. So what I try to do in those situations is I try to time it when the baby's ready for a nap. So it was super duper stressful because that morning, he's up and I know, okay, he's like a ticking time bomb until it's time for his first nap. So I'm rushing around the house. And of course, I have a list, but do I look at it? No, I'm trying to do all of this off of the top of my head. So I'm rushing around the house trying to pack extra clothes, pack diapers, make sure I have formula, make sure my daughter has milk in her sippy cup. Oh, do I have snacks? Do I have toys for both children? It was just absolutely insane. So, my husband sometimes gets frustrated with me because then I come home absolutely exhausted. And he's like, why do you have to make things harder on yourself? And what I try to explain to him is it's all about filling up the day. If my kids can be busy and our day can be full, then I know I'm that much closer to nap time or I'm that much closer to bedtime. It's so depressing to think that my days are spent thinking about the next time my kids are going to be asleep. but honestly, it's like those end marks. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm looking at my video monitor. My daughter is sound asleep like a wee little cherub in her bed, and my son is doing laps around his crib. But you know what? Maybe torturing our children by putting them in their crib when they're not ready to sleep is how they learn to crawl, because he looks like he's doing pretty good right now. I've kind of had that back and forth guilt where I wonder, okay, should I go in there and rock him for 5 minutes because he'll probably go back to sleep, or do I risk engaging with him too much to where he's wide awake? So I've decided, you know what? He's not crying, so I think I'm going to leave him for now. So I'll let you know if I have to pause this podcast or not. But for now, let's keep going. Let's keep forging ahead. So the title of this podcast this week is Mom is the Loneliest Number. Now, the other day when I was jotting down some notes for this podcast, my husband walked by and he saw the title and he got really sad for a moment. And he said, I don't want you to be lonely. And I just kind of looked at him and was like, well, if I'm being honest with you, being a mom can be pretty lonely sometimes. He just kind of hung his head and felt kind of bad because my husband, when he became a father for the first time, so almost 3 years ago, he took on the role of wanting to provide. So even though I make a great wage, I have a college education, I'm a teacher, I have my master's, I make plenty of money. It's not about us needing that financial stability. It's just he really dove into this role of wanting to provide and give us security. And so I really respect that. He is so hardworking. I mean, he's working right now. He worked yesterday. He's worked the last 5 days. The only day that he had off was the actual holiday, Thanksgiving. So that was nice. Mind you, on Thanksgiving, he cooked our entire meal. He smoked food on the smoker. He made all the sides. So even on his day off, he worked the whole day. So I am not mad at that hustle. However, there are times when I do find myself not resentful because I wouldn't want to have it the other way, but I just, A, I miss having him around, and B, I wish I had more help. So, he just really dove into wanting to work all the time and make sure there was going to be money in the bank and that we were going to have that kind of security. And with my daughter, with how difficult it was when she was a baby, I think I just needed him around more. And so with the birth of my son, I feel like I kind of explained that to him a little bit beforehand. And so this time around, he was definitely more involved. But now here he is working 7 days a week for as many weeks as he possibly can. So sometimes, I have this little devil on my shoulder that tells me he just doesn't want to spend time with you guys. But then the angel on my shoulder tells me he does. He's just doing what he thinks is best. So, different people handle things differently. So why is this called Mom is the Loneliest Number? Why are we so lonely? I just want to share with you my experience from when I had my kids. Obviously, there is clinical postpartum depression. I don't think I ever got to that point, but I can be completely honest with you and tell you with both kids, I had some really, really low moments, some really lonely moments. And honestly, when I reflect on what was making me so lonely, I think it was the emotions and the feelings that I was experiencing that I didn't think anyone could relate to. That's what made me feel alone. Because so many times I would struggle with this question. Is it possible to feel lonely even though you're never alone? When you have a child and they're a baby, you're never alone. That child is almost always with you. And so how is it possible that you can feel alone when there's always this little person with you? And what I realized was that you really can feel alone even though you're not ever alone. And so part of the reason I wanted to make this episode is for anyone that's out there that's ever felt that way, just to let you know you're not alone. It took me a long time before I opened up and shared with the women around me how I was feeling. because when I became a first-time parent with my daughter, I kind of felt like a failure for the first good portion of the time. The first thing I felt like I failed at was even just when she was born. I had this big, grandiose birth plan of having a natural, unmedicated childbirth, and I ended up having an emergency C-section. So right there, I felt like I had already kind of failed right off the bat. Now, when I go back to that moment and I think about when I had that C-section, at that moment, I really didn't care. I was just happy to have the baby, and honestly, after 12 hours of unmedicated labor, I was just happy I didn't have to push. That's the true story right there. But as I went further into being a mom, I started realizing I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and everybody around me seemed to have it all together. So what the heck was wrong with me? So all of a sudden, I would feel alone. I remember the first time feeling alone was when I was on maternity leave. I'll never forget, I was really excited to be home with the baby, and I knew I'd have the house to myself all day, and I had the perfect excuse not to cook, not to clean, but just to be there with my little sweet baby. Well, that baby cried a lot. She did not want to go in the swing. She wouldn't take a pacifier. She didn't like the car. And I felt like the only way that I could make her happy was if I held her. I remember there was one day that I held her for 19 out of the 24 hours. So she slept in her bassinet for a total of 5 hours, and the entire rest of the day I held her. I wouldn't eat because if she was asleep and I moved and she woke up, I would kick myself. I wouldn't shower because obviously you can't shower when you're holding a sleeping baby. I hardly went to the bathroom. It was really the hardest time of my life. I remember my dad, my mom wanted to help me out as much as she could, obviously, but my dad, from what I understand, it got to the point where he wanted me to eventually have to kind of figure it out. And so my mom went back home. And I'll never forget, a month later, so the baby was about a month old, it was my birthday. And so my parents came in so that my husband and I could go out for my birthday. And I opened the door, and I swear my mom's face turned white. And she's like, "Okay, I'm here now if you want to shower and get ready." And I was like, "I did shower, and I am ready, and I guess I just look like hell." And I guess my dad, immediately grabbed her by the arm and whispered to her, "You better stay for a few days." So I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to say that I was struggling and that I was having a hard time because, again, I felt like something was wrong with me. So instead of reaching out for help, I just kind of kept it to myself. So when I was on maternity leave, I thought it would be this great, relaxing time, and it was so difficult. Everyone's at work, all my friends are at work, or if they're home, they live super far away from me. This time around with my son, I remember one day on maternity leave, I'm like, perfect, I'll pack him up and we'll go visit my friend in LA. And I made it to the freeway before I turned around and came home. The baby was crying nonstop, and it got to the point where I thought I was going to lose it and pull my car into oncoming traffic. Now, I shouldn't joke about things like that, but the truth is, when you're having baby blues and you're having a hard time, those thoughts really do cross your mind. I don't want to get too dark with it, but I just want to put out there, I used to remember seeing stories on the news about moms. You hear about that mom that, killed their 5 kids or whatever, and you would think, what a monster. And now, I don't get it in the sense that I could ever see myself doing that, but I do understand that they were probably really struggling and snapped. And so even though I don't want to get that dark and deep with this, it is a real thing, and so there are solutions out there, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I mentioned that I thought maternity leave was going to be this relaxing experience. This summer, when I was home with my son as a newborn, I realized my license had expired, so I had to go to the DMV, which is so much fun to do in your free time. And so luckily, my son's been a pretty easy baby, minus the whole sleep aspect. And so I took him with me to the DMV. And so I brought him in the stroller, and I think at this point he was maybe a little over a month old. Oh, which reminds me of another fun moment when I took my son out super young. I had a woman approach me at the grocery store and say, "How many weeks is he?" And I can't remember exactly, but let's just say he was 3 weeks. And I said, "Oh, he's 3 weeks old." And she said, "You're not supposed to leave the house before they're 6 weeks." And I was like, oh, I thought she was going to say like, "Oh, how sweet, how cute." But no, she just wanted to judge me. So anywho, so I was at the DMV and it gets to be my turn. And I went up to the counter and the guy's like making small chit chat with me. And he basically like hinted around like, "Why aren't you at work today?" And I said, "Oh, I'm on maternity leave." And he goes, "Oh, paid vacation, huh?" I just stared back at him like if looks could kill. And I was like, yeah, paid vacation. He was pretty young, so I decided to let it go. But hopefully the look that I gave him let him know never to say that to a mother again. Another thing I noticed that made me feel really lonely is how many of your friends go MIA, totally disappear. I remember with baby number 1, we had so many people visit us in the hospital. We had so many people come by the house, and you have people bring dinners and casseroles, and people are so excited the first time one of their friends has their first kid. With the second baby, we really didn't have that many people come visit us at the hospital. And this time it was easy. I had a VBAC, so this time I wasn't recovering from a major surgery. It would have been nice to have people come visit. And then once we were home, I had quite a few people text me and say, "I'm sure you guys have a ton of people stopping by the house right now." And I seriously wrote back like, "Actually, not really. We're pretty open to having visitors," and it just kind of stayed like that. And so sometimes I feel like I am begging my friends to hang out with me. It's a pretty crappy feeling. Like you don't want to feel like people don't want to be your friend anymore just because you don't have kids. And I know that that's not what it is. I don't think I've honestly lost a friend because I decided to have a child. It's just things are different. And maybe they feel like they're respecting my space because they know that I have kids to take care of. But what I really want to just tell them is like, hey, even though I have these kids around me, I kind of miss my old life and I feel lonely a lot of the time. And so I'd love to have someone come by and just say, "What's up? Let me spend time with you and your kids." So a recent experience that I had is one of my closest friends from high school who lives in a different state than me. The last time I saw him was actually in the hospital when my daughter was born. So we're talking almost 3 years ago. And not only has he not met my son, but he hasn't seen my daughter since probably the day after she was born. And it's one of those things like, I'm not mad about that. I get it. Everyone's life is busy. Everyone has stuff going on in their life. And who am I to try to like wedge my way in there? But if someone's going to reach out to me and want to know how I'm doing, besides work, my kids are everything. I don't have anything else going on. When people ask me like, "So what's new?" I literally don't have an answer. And sometimes I feel pretty dumb about that. But that's reality. So anyway, so this person reached out to me. You know what? Actually, now reflecting, looking back, I reached out to them. You gotta love social media, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but this person had commented on one of my photos, and I said something like, "I'd love to catch up soon," and they mentioned they were going to be in town. So let's make plans. So this person reached out to me during a work day, and I texted them back like, hey, I'm at work. You must have forgotten. And they're like, oh, yeah, sorry. And I said, well, let's get together tomorrow. It's the weekend. And they're like, perfect. And I said, I'm wide open. I'm a giant loser. I have 2 kids. So literally my entire weekend is open. And I said, if I could have a preference, I prefer to do something in the morning. Because for those moms out there that you have napping kids, you know you want your kid to be as tired as possible before nap time. So they were like, yeah, totally, no problem. Let's get together tomorrow. And I never heard from this person again. It was one of those things where the next day, when I didn't have anything going on, I really wanted to text them and say, like, hey, are we going to be able to get together today? But I felt like I was going into that, like, desperate category where I'm the girl dating the guy who's trying to reach out and beg them to hang out with her. I don't want to feel like that. You know, I love my kids, and I wish other people wanted to spend time with them. And it just brings you back to that place where you feel lonely. Like you feel like your kids are your best friends, and you don't want your kids to be your best friends because that's not what you're supposed to do. But in reality, my little 2.5-year-old daughter, a lot of times I feel like she's my little best friend. But don't tell my husband that. So this person, so I didn't hear from them again. And then on Thanksgiving, they texted me, happy Thanksgiving. I'm coming back next month. We have to figure out lunch with like that emoji of the teeth, like, ugh. And I was like, I'm here. You figure out your life. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You know, I know some moms out there, your kids are super busy. They have sports all the time, or there's like 1,000 birthday parties to go to. I don't have that. You know, my daughter is still pretty young to where she doesn't really have real friends. She has friends at school, but the school that she goes to, they do like a little birthday party for all the kids. It's really adorable. And she has her little friends there that she gets excited to see, and you know, but it's not like that yet. And so I know in a couple years down the line, I'm going to look back and I'm going to miss being this bored, essentially. But for now, a lot of the times I'm trying to fill up the day. I remember driving my husband crazy because at the end of the day, he'd come home and I'd be like, I just got to survive. I just got to get through the day. And I guess I was saying it a lot. And you know, he couldn't relate. He couldn't understand because he's going to work. He's in that rat race out there. And, you know, probably from the outside looking in, it doesn't look like that tough of a job. But being home with kids, it's exhausting. And so it would be nice to have friends stop by and hang out with the kids for a little bit. It would kind of help take that long day and make it just a little bit shorter. So next I want to talk a little bit about what I mentioned briefly, that idea of social, I'm using sarcastic air quotes, social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat, there is that idea of reality versus the pictures that people post. I think I want to do a whole separate podcast about social media because it really is enough to make a mom go off the deep end. But I want to talk about how social media can make someone feel so lonely. You know, the idea of social media, social, it's supposed to help us connect with other people, communicate, share things about our lives. But what's so hard about social media is that people really, for the most part, only share the parts of their lives that are good. Now, I do know that there are some people that share only the negative, like, wah, wah, I lost my job, wah, wah, my dog died, or whatever. But a lot of times you see those perfect pictures, those perfect moments. And if you are a mom that is deep and dark into the struggle of having kids, seeing those pictures is enough to make you lose it. I have tried since I had my first child to kind of share those real life moments on my social media accounts, as well as obviously sharing the adorable pictures as well. But when I was so in that struggle, in that loneliness of having a hard time, it would have been nice to see a real life moment of someone else's struggle, because all I could think is that no one else was going through what I was going through, and how I didn't want to admit that I was having a hard time. And it got so bad to the point where on Mother's Day, my very first Mother's Day, I had to actually take a break from social media completely. My poor husband, I felt like the cards were kind of stacked against him, because here I am seeing these pictures of, look at these flowers my husband got me, or look at this brand new ring I got, or look at this breakfast in bed I received on Mother's Day. And after seeing all that, I don't think there was anything that my husband could have done that would have met this expectation of what I thought I should receive that day. Now, mind you, I still stand by the fact that I think Mother's Day is even more important than my birthday. Because yes, my birthday celebrates the day that I was born, but Mother's Day celebrates the fact that being a mom is one of the hardest jobs out there, and I do want to be recognized for that. So that Mother's Day was not so good. This Mother's Day that I had this year was a way, 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 way better. So there's that. But going back to the whole social media thing, I had to completely take a break. I had to accept the fact that looking at these pictures was depressing me, and that the only solution was to stop looking at them. So that's what I did. And once I felt like I was kind of in a good place mentally, I could go back and look at these pictures. Because what I had to accept is the fact that, yes, these people are posting perfect pictures, but there's also those moments that we don't see, that they're having the same feelings that I am. Now, my sister-in-law gave me a perspective to look at that really helped me accept looking at those perfect pictures. When I was particularly having a hard time, I was super jealous of a picture that someone posted. She kind of explained it to me like this. Yes, it's annoying to see those pictures and to know that maybe 5 seconds later everybody was fighting, or 5 seconds later that adorable baby in the perfect outfit spit up all over their clothes. But that moment, that perfect moment in that perfect picture did happen. You can't take that away from them. So even though everything might have fallen apart right after the camera snapped, that moment of perfection where that connection happened really did take place. And so you have to accept that, yes, there are crappy moments, but there really are good moments too. So that's why, even though, I do share those real life mom moments where things are going wrong, I do also share those moments that I can capture that do show how fun it can be too. Because yes, the truth is, though it's really, really hard, there are those awesome moments as well. So like I said, I think I want to talk about social media more extensively in another podcast, but I think for now, we'll leave it there. So there's all these things that cause us to feel lonely as moms. And so I want to talk about what kind of solutions there are if you are feeling lonely. Because like I told you, I definitely went through this with the birth of both of my kids. One thing that I did when I had my daughter and I was feeling really desperate just to have something to do, I found a class for her to take. So even though she was only 3 months old, there are places like Gymboree, or she took a class at a place called My Gym, where they have classes even for itty bitty little babies. And it's silly because the baby's like literally laying on its back, like playing with a ball. Like you could be doing that at home. But the point is, you're out of the house, you got dressed. Even if you just threw your hair up in a messy bun, the best thing you can do when you have a young child or young children is get out of the house at least once a day. If you don't make that commitment to yourself, you will get stuck in the house because you don't feel like getting off the couch. You don't feel like getting dressed. You feel like as soon as you get dressed, the baby's just going to spit up on you, so it's easier to just stay at home in your pajamas. But if you stay at home, you are going to get depressed. So you've got to get off the couch and you've got to do something. So when you sign up for these classes, some places you pay monthly, some places you have to pay for a few months, and so you do have that commitment there. And I think that's kind of smart of them because, yeah, you get someone to sign up for an entire month, they can count on that money coming in, but it also helps the mom have that commitment because once you've paid for a month, so 4 classes, let's say, unless you're willing to throw that money away, you do have to get off your butt, get dressed, and go to the class. So those classes are also another great way for you to meet other moms that are going through the same exact thing as you, because the classes are grouped by age. So you will be there with moms that have children the same age as yours. So you can find a class for your baby or your child. Now let's say money's a struggle because let's be real, money sucks. So let's say you don't want to pay for one of those classes because to be honest with you, they are kind of expensive. Look up your local library. Go onto Google and Google your city and find out the local library. I discovered my local library has a weekly story time. So again, once a week, I would load up my daughter in the car and we would go to story time. Now, again, she was a little itty-bitty baby and was basically a blob in my lap. But there was a story being read to her, there was other kids running around, and there's a ton of moms that come to these story times, and you're in that same struggle, and so maybe you can make a connection with another mom. Also, there are mom groups everywhere. You can meet up with a group of women most of the time once a week, and you can vent to each other, you can cry to each other, and you can share those feelings that you're having. So you can, again, go on Google your city, and find a mom group in your city. So if you're feeling alone, because not everybody has friends that have kids, and so you're going to want to find other friends out there that are going through the same thing as you because it's going to make you feel less alone, and you can share those feelings that you're having. Because no matter how many classes you sign up for or how many mommy groups you join, the number one thing that will help you feel less alone is to talk about your feelings. You will be surprised at how many women you will be able to find that have felt the same feelings that you have. So even if you feel totally ashamed and totally embarrassed, I can promise you there are 100 other women that have felt exactly what you have felt. I was even surprised talking to my mom about it. I feel like my mom is mother of the century. She's the most amazing mom in the world. There's no way she ever went through any of this. There's things that have come back to her that she forgot about. I'm almost 35 years old, so she hasn't had a baby in 35 years. But being around her grandchildren is bringing back all these memories of how hard it was. And just hearing these stories from my own mother made me feel like less of a failure. Made me feel like I wasn't doing everything completely wrong because we've all been through these hard times together. And again, I do want to remind you, if social media is making you feel depressed, just say no. Don't sign on. Take a social media cleanse because I can tell you from personal experience, if you're having the baby blues, nothing will make you feel worse than looking at pictures of people who seem to really just have it all together. So if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. And I'll give you a little trick. What I did when I did that social media cleanse, I actually went in and deleted my Facebook app and I deleted my Instagram app. And so I knew if I wanted to go back on to those platforms, I was going to have to go back into the App Store and re-download them. And so I think I made it about 2 months where I wasn't on social media. And to be honest, it was pretty liberating. It was pretty liberating because I don't know about you, but I'm always on Instagram. I'm always on Facebook. And, it's just in those moments that you have to yourself, you're kind of curious what's going on with everybody else. And so I know if I'm starting to feel kind of bummed out because other people just seem to have it all, that's when I know I need a social media cleanse. So I think we'll kind of wrap it up there. I hope that helps you. If you've ever felt lonely as a mom, just know you are not alone, and just go through those avenues to help yourself. Join groups, get your kids involved in things, because you will connect with other women who feel the same way. So before I sign off for this episode, I do want to remind you, if you have any feedback or suggestions, you can email me at motheroftheyearpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to go follow me on Instagram at motheroftheyearpodcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate it 5 stars, and leave a comment. And don't forget, ladies, the struggle continues next week. See you soon.